Come on out to Mississauga, it's the greatest place around. Where on a quiet evening you can watch the sun go down. And if you should need a friend, there are plenty to be found. That's why everybody loves that good old Mississauga.
Hello, and thank you for joining us here on Ask a Historian. I'm Matthew Wilkinson, historian with Heritage Mississauga. Please send in your questions to history@heritagemississauga.org as we explore the fascinating stories of Mississauga together on the program. Like, subscribe, and follow us and stay up to date on all the heritage happenings with Heritage Mississauga. As part of this program, we will be exploring memories, moments, and milestones from the past 50 years with past and present civic leaders for the City of Mississauga's 50th anniversary. On this week's episode, we are excited to be joined by City of Mississauga Ward 2 Councillor Alvin Tedjo as we explore his personal perspectives of moments and milestones for the City of Mississauga's 50th anniversary. Thank you, Councillor Tedjo, for joining us here on the program. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Matthew. Happy to come on and chat about Mississauga.
Wonderful. Well, let's jump right into your own connections. What's your connection to the City of Mississauga? When did it become home to you?
Well, I was born in Toronto, in a small place in East York. And then at the age of 4, my family moved west into Mississauga. And over the next several decades, we've continued to move west in Mississauga, starting, I think, probably more in the Cawthra area, and then moving to City Center, and then Streetsville, and then now I live in Sheridan near Clarkson. So raising my family here, we've got 3 young kids with my wife and I, and they're 10, 12, and 14. So we've put down some roots and sent them out to school and played all the sports that I think the city has to offer.
So they're getting to see Mississauga through your eyes a little bit as it's evolved through your lifetime. Now you're bringing in your kids to it. So wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, it's been almost 40 years and certainly seen the city change quite a bit. I remember when we used to live near City Center, I lived on a street called Parkview Boulevard.
Okay.
And as soon as I walked out of my street, I could turn right and look at City Hall because it was just at the end of the street.
Okay.
And I recently visited, and you can't do that anymore. There's plenty of buildings in the way now, so that's really interesting to see the city grow like that. And that story of you walk 15 minutes uphill to school. I used to do that when I went to Father Michael Gates. We'd cross the fields between our home and the school, and now all those fields are massive, massive buildings.
So you referenced when you first came, you were in the Cawthra area. What are some of your earliest memories of growing up in Mississauga? I know you weren't born here, but you came at an early age. I mean, City Hall obviously has got to be one of those in terms of the evolution of City Center itself. But just curious about how you had Mississauga through your eyes and those early memories of your time here.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we spent a lot of time in community centers. We went to libraries. We would do a lot of activities like that, and we'd register in sports. So I remember the parks and the fields, and then Square One, right? I mean, we spent a lot of time in and around Square One. It was a big part of my life as a young man. As a teenager, I'd walk around, I'd visit lots of people who worked there. But you would take the bus and sort of that, ground level view perspective of the city. It was, accessible at the time, and it was kind of this was your little world that you lived in. And
Yeah.
no, it's been fascinating watching it grow and turn into what it is now.
I'm just picturing the evolution or the growth of City Center itself, City Hall. You're mentioning that you're seeing it from your house, and Walkerville now, of course, with all the high density development that's taken place. I mean, just the evolution itself, you got to shake your head a little bit in terms of just what you've seen change.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we used to go skating. I went to Corpus Christi Elementary, and we would just walk with our skates over our shoulders through the fields.
Yeah.
There was always a dirt path that someone had carved out in the ground, and it would kind of give you a straight line to City Hall. You'd emerge from the forest. There were trees in the downtown back then,
Yep.
and yeah, I remember doing that quite a bit during the winters.
Yeah.
And One of the things I have noticed as well is that the weather's changed quite a bit. I remember being able to skate outside a lot more, and we
Hmm.
have a lot of naturalized ice rinks now that are not as well used as they used to be because it hasn't been as cold.
Yep. I grew up making backyard rinks in my backyard, and I haven't been able to do that for a couple of years. Last year we had 1 day of skating.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a lot of effort. It's
It
a lot of
is. It
work
is a lot of
for
effort.
not enough ice time.
What are some of the significant changes that you have seen during your time? And I know you've moved throughout. I mean, everywhere you've lived has gone through this evolution. I imagine, from the Streetsville community now into you're in the Park Royal area, I think, right? Is that right?
I'm in Sheridan
You're in
Homelands.
Homelands. Okay, yeah.
Sheridan Homelands, just
Yeah.
north of Clarkson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the evolution of those, I mean, those are mature subdivision areas. Sheridan Homelands has been part of our community for some time, but just the city around you, you must have marveled at some of the changes you've seen and some of the exciting kind of the arrival of the future, if you will, to Mississauga a little bit. Can you comment on some of the changes that are kind of significant through your eyes that the city has undergone?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've seen a significant transformation in terms of our transportation system.
Mhm.
The transitway getting built. We've widened a number of our highways, a number of our arterial roads. You've seen a lot more trails. The Burnhamthorpe Trail getting built is fantastic. The Waterfront Trail, the Nine Creeks Trail, which goes right through my community, which Councillor Rass worked on
Yeah.
for many years, is an amazing evolution as well. I think we've become much more conscious about how we get around the city, and I think that's great. We still see about 85% of trips taken through the city of Mississauga is taken in a vehicle, but what we need to do is give people more options, and I think we've started to see that become more and more of a priority for residents. They're asking for more bus routes, they're asking for more frequent service, they want safe, separated trails and bike lanes to get around the city. But at the same time, we're still also expanding our housing and how people get to that housing. We still need to build those roads, and we are doing that. And that's kind of what I've seen probably the most of is sort of that expansion of the grid through Mississauga.
That evolution of housing type too. I mean, I think Mississauga, we see ourselves. I don't know if you echo this, but it's a maturing of a city, right? Like this is a evolution in front of us is about the city coming of age, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the city grow out quite a bit.
Yeah.
And, since I moved here almost 40 years ago, I would say that we've finished building the rest of the subdivisions through the city, especially in the Northwest.
Yeah.
And now we're starting to grow up. All those buildings kind of came up in the city center in the last 10, 15, 20 years.
Indeed, yes.
And that's been really great because I think it sort of shows that we are a city that's more than just a suburb. We are becoming an urban center, and we are growing up. And those unlimited heights are really interesting because we're now building a building, M3 right now, which is going to be about 82 stories.
Yeah.
We'll be the city with the second largest building in the entire country. We'll have a building that's taller than any building in Montreal, in Vancouver, in Calgary. It'll be Toronto and then Mississauga, and that's quite fascinating.
And what I'm never one. I'm not great on the looking forward part in my career, but you wonder what's next, right? This sets the groundwork for the next thing, right? And where the city goes from here. We look at M City, and of course the Absolute Towers a few years ago, and it just they've really paved the way for that new density development. And some of it is I mean, there's a design element that's coming into many. It's not just towers anymore. There's quite it's defining our downtown core.
And I think that's really interesting. That was the really great thing about the Absolute Towers is that it was a design contest. We were trying to create something that was iconic for the city of Mississauga. And I think the other builders and other developers have sort of taken that challenge on and are running with it, which is great. You see the Exchange Towers being built right now. Even the M City Towers are, I don't know, I've been calling it kind of a Jenga model
It
where
kind of looks that way, doesn't it?
yeah, well, people can identify them and sort of understand that, okay, that's what that's going to be. And that's great because that gives the city some visual identity, right?
Mhm.
And the city center was a blank slate when Mississauga was formed, right? And it gave us an opportunity to kind of design a new community from the ground up.
Yeah. And I think the blank canvas idea is a neat one when you start looking at. I know there were things here before, but at the same idea, the forecasting forward in your position, it gives you a hand in the creativity of what's coming, right? I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but it feels like there's these almost an unlimited slate there, or a canvas to work with.
Yeah, and I mean, Mississauga had a lot of that space, but it also had that heritage village communities, right? And I represent Clarkson. Clarkson Village has been there for a long time.
Yeah.
The Port Credit Village, Malton, Streetsville, Cooksville. Those are sort of the five, I think, sort of old villages.
Yeah.
And we've certainly preserved a number of those heritage buildings and heritage sites. And I think it's important that we include that. But that's also sort of a focal point and a starting point for the evolution of what's next,
Yeah.
right? And we're talking a lot about, the next evolution of those communities outside of just the downtown core. The downtown core is going to have what it's going to have, but everywhere else, especially along transit lines and these community nodes, have an opportunity to show the next step of what they're going to be, right? There's going to be more housing, there's going to be more density, but it'll keep the village feel to it as well. And how do we do that? That's what we're doing right now, and that's what we're figuring out right now.
I think that it comes into for me, I think that it's a wonderful opportunity looking forward where you can see the not only the evolution of the city, but the intermingling of these aspects of our city. We live in a multifaceted community, and that should be celebrated. I think it's great, a great opportunity for the city moving forward.
Yeah, and it's how do we integrate everything and how
Yeah.
do we connect everyone, right? And we know that people need to get around, but we also know that we need to provide more services, more amenities within a certain amount of space for people so that
Yeah.
they can stay within their communities if that's what they want to do. And we haven't done enough of that necessarily just yet, but we're
Yeah.
starting to move that towards in that direction. You'll see some more master plan communities like Lakeview, Brightwater,
Yeah.
where down by the lake, they've got this opportunity with these large parcels of land to create something new, but also look towards the future, right? And integrate itself into its history.
Yeah.
And so there's much more mixed use now where we're thinking about how to connect people to grocery stores, to work, to transit and transportation, so that they have options within their communities.
Right. No, a challenge, but a reward, a worthwhile one, I would think. And so I know, I mean, you've had a long, I don't know if 10 years is the right word, long time in Mississauga. You must have been involved with organizations and groups in your community. I'm just wondering if you can. I always think that, the volunteers are what's the heartbeat of the city, right? And I'm just wondering if you can maybe give a little hat tip to some of the organization or groups that you've been a part of over your time here.
It started when I was young. When I was in high school, I joined the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee, which is now the Mississauga Youth Advisory
Yep.
Committee. But Mayor McCallion at the time wanted this group of young people to volunteer and to raise their hand and see what they could do for the city. And I was a part of that for I think almost all 4 or 5 years of high school. Going to City Hall for meetings in the committee rooms,
Yep.
seeing some council meetings in person with a lot of other future leaders. I know Councillor Butt also did MIAC for quite a while.
Yep.
And so you learn a lot about the city when you do that. And I volunteered with the Canada Day Committee when that was a separate committee of residents. So I was happy to do that. I got recognized as a Young Citizen of the Year when I was 16, just volunteering for the city, for the school, for everything I could get myself involved in. I was always super interested in what else was happening in and around the city. And then now, it's all related to either work or my kids. So I sit on the board with the Mississauga Southwest Baseball Association. I coach my son's hockey team. There's a lot of that, and we need to spend as much time as we can supporting and thanking our volunteers for
Yeah.
really being able to make our city what it is, and the events and the teams and the activities that happen because of that is phenomenal. I get to sit on the BIA, the Business Improvement Area for Clarkson, and we've done a lot of great things just in the last couple years where we've closed the street for Halloween in the Village, and we saw 9,000 people on Lakeshore just a few weeks ago.
I was one of them.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was really happy to see it just in the second year now that we've closed the
Yeah.
street and made it safer for people, and it really brought more people out. But that takes a lot of volunteers, takes a lot of effort for people to be able to do too. And we want to do more. We want to find more opportunities where we can have these types of events come out and bring people together in the city. And we need to recognize and thank the volunteers that help us do that.
I marvel. The volunteers priceless, and again, the heartbeat of the city, and just we I mean, we also rely on volunteers for everything that we do in the community, so we couldn't do it without them, and I know that's the same for you. But uh I marvel. I mean, being a counselor is not a 9 to 5 job. And
I wish it was. I wish it
and
was.
you're still coaching little league and hockey.
Yeah.
Kudos to
Yeah.
you.
And a lot of swimming. Actually, my history with the city comes a lot with the pool.
Oh,
I was a lifeguard at the city of Mississauga for a very long time. Through my teens, came back when I was in university, continued to coach and teach, do some life-saving competitions. I was running that for a long time, the Mississauga Life-Saving Club. Met a lot of my friends, including my wife, through swimming. My kids all swim now too, so it's been fascinating. And really, what was interesting was that as I was a first aid instructor, a lifeguard instructor, a staff trainer, I got to visit every community center and every pool that the city has. So I love going back and seeing when we're making these renovations and sort of looking at like, oh, they changed this or they changed that.
yeah.
I first took my swimming lessons at Huron Park,
Oh
and
yeah.
then you kind of go back and you're like, oh, this has changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
Right. And now we're involved in changing South Common and Carmen Corbison or Cawthra as it used to be
Yeah.
called, or Malton. And so I've worked at all these places. And so it's so great seeing the city infrastructure continue to evolve with the city.
I was gonna say for me, I'm I swam to most facilities in the city, and just I that's how I age myself. I'm like, I remember when that was new, but no.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it's gone its second
Yep.
renovation. Now it's yeah, or they're changing it again. I remember all the outdoor pools before they got their, massive redesign. They were all
Yeah,
different,
they were.
right?
Yeah.
They all had sort of unique quirks to them, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, they're much nicer now, but
Yeah.
sometimes you don't want to lose that character.
Fair enough. Um, this could be an endless question, and I recognize that, but we all stand on the shoulders of giants that have helped get us to where we are, or see the future that we see. But who are some of the people in your life that had positive impact on either your development or on the city as a whole? Just Mississauga through the eyes of others. I'm just wondering if you can pay maybe a hat tip to some of those giants in our community.
Yeah, I mean, I have to first start recognizing my parents. I mean, they came here. They immigrated from Indonesia. They're ethnic Chinese. They, picked up and moved across the world. My mom at 18 to go to school, and you kind of think of how much effort, time, and sacrifice that takes, and then to completely change where you live, your adult life, and then raise your family, and then the struggle in, not your primary language.
Mhm.
I often try to think about that to sort of say, how comfortable am I where I am because this is where I grew up? And imagine picking up and going somewhere completely different and then trying to raise your family in that environment, trying to, buy a home, trying to get a job. And that always impresses me because there's so many people in Mississauga who have that same story, right? They see Mississauga as a place where they can raise their family, where they can buy a home, where they can find a job. And I think it's our job as council, as counselors, to help those people as much as we can. How do we create the conditions for their success? Is our housing unaffordable right now? Kinda, yes. We're one of the least affordable cities in the GTA. How do we improve on that, right? How do we help more people come here and how do we help more people stay here? We need to make sure that they have jobs. So we need to make sure that there's an environment here where businesses can succeed. And I think the giants of our past have laid the groundwork for that, right? Hazel always talked about, Mayor McCallion always talked about how important industry was, how important it was for us to attract economic development so that people could live and work. And everyone thought we were a commuter city for years, and we've actually been a net recipient of jobs for several decades now.
Yeah.
And that impression of Mississauga was never fair. And you take that and you take the the foresight to sort of think of Mississauga as a place that could be a destination, and then how do we build around that, and how do we support the people who are here, and you get to where we are, and you get to sort of where we need to continue going as well.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating that the area around Pearson Airport is actually the second most important economic zone in the entire country. There's downtown Toronto, which has the largest economic impact,
Yeah.
and then it's the area around Pearson. So we've got the second largest economy outside of downtown Toronto here in Mississauga. In the entire country. I mean, everywhere. I'm including Montreal, I'm including Calgary, Vancouver, everywhere. And that's amazing, right? So how do we continue to grow that? How do we continue to foster that so that we can continue to be successful?
I imagine it's always the balancing act, or how do you attract people, but then how do you keep people, right? Like that's the you want people who are making Mississauga their home, or able to afford to be here, be able to work here, and invest here, right? And then grow in this community. And I think that's what makes a city great, is people that are invested in it. But it's going to be a continual challenge and an opportunity, I guess, right? Um, Prognostication. If we were to put our hats on and look forward to the next 50 years, here we are looking back on 50 years. We've been doing it all year round about the city's 50th anniversary, and well, we should celebrate this place. But this isn't the end chapter, right? This is a stepping stone to the future for the city, and maybe our most important transition phase. I might argue right now is what we're seeing happening in our city now, and you're one of the people helping to steer that ship. And uh, if you could prognosticate and look at the next 50 years, do you have a hope or a wish for the city of what you would see coming?
Yeah, that's been a huge part of this term of council, and I think it's so important. We're going through, a new official plan. We've talked about a new and gone through a new strategic plan for the city because we've built out, and because now we're talking about building up and talking about connecting people. There's a unique opportunity right now to sort of design how that works and to make sure that it works in a certain way. Um, my concern would be not doing that and not being intentional with how we do that, and making it more difficult for the city to be successful in the future. Because once you've built something, it's hard to unbuild something,
Right.
right? And while we are talking about housing as gentle infill and going up where we have space to go up, we're still running out of space,
Right.
and we only have so much. Access to capital. We only have so much operating funds. We're really concerned about how affordable the city is to live in, and with property taxes being the primary source of revenue for the city, that's a difficult thing to put on the backs of people who are here right now, which is why development charges were invented in the first place. But really, the vision needs to be about where we need to go and how we're going to get people around, because I think housing and transportation are the top two things that we're going to have to sort out, and then economic development, which also includes, how we get people around. We can't completely rely on roads to move people. That is going to be the biggest challenge that we have. We've already seen in certain areas of the city we're way above our pre-pandemic ridership numbers in terms of my way and transportation and transit, sorry, especially along Derry. So you're talking about the economic area around the airport, and you're talking about the population center around Northwest Mississauga, Streetsville, Meadowville, Lisgar, places like that, and people needing to get to where their jobs are. We have an opportunity right now to really double down and invest in transit so that we can give people that option to get around. I don't know if you've heard this axiom in the way they talk about how uh, a really great city is where rich people choose to take transit because it's the better way to get around, versus
Yep.
poorer people forced to take transit because it's the only thing that they can afford, right? And you see that in great cities around the world. We're nowhere near that. We're nowhere near that. And what we need to do is create a system and a transportation network that gets that option, right? It's not about taking people out of their cars. I don't want to force anybody out of their cars. I use my car all the time.
Yep.
I can't get around without my car. But are there more investments that we can make to help other people or my kids or even myself when I don't need to be, 50 places at once in one day? then that's what we should be building, right? And all that takes a really long time. We're going to be a few years still until the Hurontario LRT is complete. It was supposed to be done now in fall of 2024. Um, it won't be done for several years. And that's kind of the warning that we've heard. I remember this announcement happening 10 years ago.
Yep.
So you think about the next 50, what we are talking about now might not get done for 10, 15, 25 years,
Right.
right? You want to talk about a rail connection to the airport. You want to talk about, expanding two-way all-day go and having a spur go through downtown Mississauga, whether that's elevated or buried or whatever it is, you're talking decades,
Yeah.
right? And the efforts that we do now will either make that happen or not make that happen,
Right.
right? And that'll completely change how we view the city. Now, one of the unfortunate pieces of our history is that we did turn down several transit projects in the past, right? In the 80s, I think two separate governments offered an extension from Kipling in terms of the subway into Square One, and on two separate occasions, City Council rejected it. Now, that's too bad. That's the history that we are in right now. That's where we are. We have to move forward on that. But we can't let the next opportunity pass us as well, right? So every opportunity that we get to push and say, this is how we're going to move people around the city, we need to jump on it and we need to lead the way.
It requires the vision, right? Like this idea of what that future could hold for the city and the courage to follow that conviction. And I do
Mhm.
feel like this council, after having spent a good chunk of this program speaking with and meeting with several of your colleagues on council, there is that vision and that drive to get there, and I commend you for that because the last thing anyone wants is no plan. So I do think I do congratulate you and encourage you on the path that you're going and the work that you're doing, and I do look forward to what it holds for the future of our city. As much as we look forward to the past in my job and usually this program, it's the future that's exciting here in our 50th anniversary year of what might come. So thank you for the work that you do and continue to do on the vision of the future.
No, thanks, Matthew. Really appreciate it.
Well, with that, I just wanted to say again, a thank you for joining us. I appreciate walking down memory lane, but also spending some time on what that future memory lane might look like. And I wish you all the best moving forward. And thank you for your commitment to our community and having not born, but grown and raised here.
Yeah,
And,
I was four. I barely remember a time before Mississauga.
and may you not continue to keep moving west. You're running into the border.
Yeah, yeah, I'm near next to Oakville already. I think I've reached my limit here.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it, and all the best to you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you for spending some time with us here, and thank you also to Ward 2 Councillor Alvin Tedjo for sharing his memories, moments, and milestones with us for the City of Mississauga's 50th anniversary. Like, subscribe, and follow us, and we will see you on future episodes here with Heritage Mississauga.